On this video, we are actually going to find the inverse function, and I'm going to show you the 4 problems I'm going to work with on this video. So if you want to fast forward, if you're only interested in this one with the fraction or, whatever, that's what we're doing. Okay, so here we go. Another word for if you want the inverse function, if this is f of x, the inverse function is written f inverse x. That's the way you say it. So if my function is called g of x, its inverse would be g, and there's like this little -1 up here to the x. That's just a little notation that you always know that's the inverse function of this function, okay? So I don't know why, that's just the way they do it. Okay, the first thing you want to do is realize that f of x can be written as a y. That's the same thing. Now we want to do the opposite, so you're going to switch all the x's and make them y's, and all the y's are going to be x's. So I'm going to write this as x equals 3y minus 8 over 5. So switch your x's and y's. Now, I want to get the y by itself. That's the goal. So if there's a fraction, and there is, get rid of the fraction. So notice I'm dividing by 5. The opposite of dividing by 5 is multiplying by 5. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 5. Basically, okay, I'll show my work here. Multiplying both sides by 5, these cancel. So I've got 5x equals 3y minus 8. Okay, move the 8 to the other side. Remember, when you move it, you do the opposite, so it'd be a plus 8. And then the opposite, this is, I want to get y by itself. The opposite of multiplying by 3 is dividing by 3. And notice I now have my y all by itself. So my inverse function, this was called f. So the way I'd write my answer is my inverse function is whatever I got, 5x plus 8 over 3. That's my answer, okay? All right, let's try this one, like that. Okay, so remember, this is the same thing as y. Switch your x's and y's. So I'm gonna write this x equals 10, and then the cube root of y minus 4, okay? Goal is to get y by itself. So this term has the y, so I'm going to move this to the other side. The opposite of subtracting 4, adding 4. Remember, when you move it to the other side, you do the opposite. Okay? This says 10 times, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide both sides by 10. So I've got that. Okay? So notice what I have here is x plus 4 over 10 equals the cube root of y. Well, the opposite of the cube root of y is taking it to the 3rd power. So I'm going to take this whole thing to the 3rd power. That way, these cancel. Those are opposite operations. So I've got the y by itself. This would be just a boring y right there. So this is my answer. So the way you would write that is my inverse function of f of x is x plus 4 over 10 to the 3rd power. Okay, should be totally opposite. Look here, don't skip steps if you have to show work on your test. But notice here we were multiplying by 10, notice we're dividing by 10. Here we were subtracting 4, here we're adding 4. Here we were taking the cube root, here we're cubing it. On your test, do not skip from here to here. Show some work, okay? I don't care what you do on your homework, I can't see it, but on your written test, I need to see work. Okay, now this one's a little bit more tricky. Again, this represents my y, so I'm going to switch all my x's and make them y and vice versa. So I'm going to write this x equals y plus 7 all over y minus 9. Okay, now I've got a fraction, so get rid of your fraction. The opposite, if I'm going to move it to the other side, the opposite of dividing by this mess is multiplying by this mess. So I'm going to move it to the other side like this. Okay, now if you don't like me doing that in one step, realize all I did is multiply both sides by y minus 9. And so these canceled. That's what I did. I just didn't show that, okay? Then I like to go ahead and distribute. So that gives me xy minus 9x equals y plus 7. Now remember, your goal is to get y by itself. So I am going to take this y and move him over here to this side. Okay, and while I'm doing that, do you see this one doesn't have a y? So I'm going to pick him up and I'm going to throw him to the other side. Okay, so I'm going to get my y's together. So notice this is a positive y. If I move him to the other side, he would be a minus y. Okay, so you always do the opposite. This is a minus 9x. If I move him to the other side, he would be a positive 9x. Now you can either write that 7 plus 9x or 9x plus 7. I don't care. Realize that's the same thing. Okay, both of these terms have the y, so I'm going to factor out the y. If you pull a y out of this, you're left with x minus 1. Notice if I distribute that back in there, I get this. Y times x, xy. Y times negative 1, negative y. Okay, and this is my goal. Notice it says y times this. So what's the opposite of multiplying is dividing. These cancel. So there I've got the y all by itself. So that grossness, that's my answer. So my inverse function of f is, I don't like the way he looks, so I'm just going to write 9x plus 7. You can write it like that. That's fine. I just think he looks gross. Over x minus 1. That's your answer right there. Okay, last one. Yahoo! Okay, that's like y. Same difference. Swap your x's and y's. So that's going to be y minus 3 cubed. Now, everything here is in parentheses. The opposite of taking something to the 5th power is taking it to the 5th root. Okay, so I've got the 5th root of x equals, these cancel, so I have y minus 3. And this one's so nice and easy. The opposite is subtracting 3, adding 3. Do not put it under the radical, okay? He was an afterthought. There, I've got my y there. I don't know what that is. There, I have my y all by itself, so that's my answer. It is the 5th root of x plus 3. And let me just say this. If on this one, like if I would have had this, I'm going to do this. This is a little extra here. I hope I'm going to totally change this problem. If you would have had something like this, x plus 4, what did that say? Let's say it's to the 7th power minus 8. The first thing you would have wanted to do, obviously you're going to switch your x's and y's. I would have moved this 8 over first. Don't forget to do that, okay? You didn't have anything over here, so you could immediately take the 5th root. But if you're going to do this, it's going to look like this. X plus 8. Look, I gave you a bonus problem. Y plus 4 to the 7th. Then take the 7th root, okay? Take that whole thing to the 7th root like that. Then these would cancel, and I have y plus 4 equals the 7th root of x plus 8. And then I would subtract 4. And remember, when you subtract 4, it's not going to be under the radical, okay? It will be outside the radical. So my final answer on that one, if this was an inverse function, would be, what does that say? The 7th root of x plus 8, make sure he's under the radical, and then minus 4. Okay, so that was a little bonus one because I got to thinking, eek.